Brad Pitt did not merely conquer Hollywood, he became one of the faces by which an era remembers it. As Tyler Durden in Fight Club, Achilles in Troy, and Cliff Booth in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he gave America danger, beauty, defiance, and the collapse of men the world mistook for unbreakable. He left Missouri with little money and no guarantee, fought through anonymous jobs, and rose to Oscars and global fame. For decades, he seemed to embody control, but no role prepared him for a family fractured across separate lives, or for a loss beyond repair. Weeks before his mother died, Brad looked into a camera, smiled, and said, "Love you, Mom." One ordinary sentence became a final goodbye. What storm stripped Hollywood's golden boy down to a son whose last words could never be answered? Honor the man behind the legend, like this video, and subscribe as we uncover the wound fame could never shield. Brad Pitt's first private battle began inside the faith that gave his family order. Born on December 18, 1963, in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and raised in Springfield, Missouri, he was the eldest of William and Jane Pitt's 3 children, bright, athletic, and at ease with others. William managed a trucking company with the discipline of hard work. Jane served as a school counselor and brought warmth to a home shaped by responsibility, restraint, and Southern Baptist belief. Pitt described that world. "We grew up First Baptist, which is the cleaner, stricter, by-the-book Christianity." He was loved there. He also learned that certain questions could disturb the peace. For an inquisitive boy, belonging meant safety, yet doubt could feel like disloyalty. Church gave that fear its clearest shape. Pitt remembered sitting in the pews as the preacher searched for someone to deliver the closing prayer. The room settled into a hush. His body tightened. He waited, hoping another name would be called. Around him, the service remained calm. Inside him, a child was discovering how frightening his own voice could feel. He wanted to laugh, challenge, explore, and test what he had been taught, while the culture around him praised certainty and self-command. Years later, he named the burden plainly. "Guilt is the thing I find most evil about it." He was still a boy, yet doubt had already begun to resemble disobedience. For a moment, there was only the fear he had learned to hide. Then life resumed. He played sports, joined school activities, charmed classmates, and appeared to belong. The strain remained hidden, measuring every question, fearing disappointment, and looking composed while uncertainty pressed beneath the surface. His smile was genuine. It simply carried more than anyone could see. Cinema became the first place where those hidden questions required no apology. As a teenager, Pitt found stories in which people could doubt, fail, rebel, wander, and still remain worthy of love. Films did not erase Missouri. They showed him that life could be larger than the path mapped around him. That discovery drew him toward acting classes, and eventually, westward in a battered car with only a few $100s and no promise that Hollywood would learn his name. Fame would later magnify his face across enormous screens, while private losses revealed how deeply Springfield had stayed with him. The boy trained to remain capable and controlled would spend decades portraying men who fracture, flee, endure, and search for meaning. His earliest hardship was not poverty or public disgrace. It was the intimate fear that becoming fully himself might cost him the place where he first learned to belong. Springfield taught him how to remain composed. The movies would teach him what to do with every feeling he had once been afraid to name. Pressure, not glamour, drove Brad Pitt west in 1986. Springfield had given him family, discipline, and a future that looked respectable, yet the life waiting after college no longer felt like his own. As a teenager, he had disappeared into dark theaters, sometimes staying for another feature because the screen offered what ordinary life did not: permission to wander, fail, and begin again. He remembered returning to Tommy for the pinball wizard sequence, while Ordinary People and Saturday Night Fever revealed worlds far beyond Missouri. At the University of Missouri, he studied journalism with an emphasis in advertising and came within 2 credits of graduating. Then he stopped. "I was a paper short of finishing," Pitt later said. He packed a worn Datsun with clothes, cassette tapes, and roughly $325, leaving behind a diploma nearly earned for a city where no one knew his name. Years later, he looked back without apology. "I see it as perfect." At 22, however, perfection looked like an empty highway, and the terrifying possibility that he had just abandoned the safest life he would ever be offered. Humiliation met him under the Los Angeles sun. Pitt took work through a job agency, delivering refrigerators, driving performers to private bookings, and standing beside traffic inside a giant chicken costume for an El Pollo Loco opening. The suit trapped the heat. Cars passed. No one looking through a windshield could have known that the man waving from inside it had crossed the country to become an actor. He later dismissed those years as a lot of weird, odd jobs, yet each shift paid for food, rent, and lessons with Roy London. In those rooms, uncertainty became material rather than a weakness to hide. From 1987 through 1990, brief appearances in Dallas, Growing Pains, and 21 Jump Street kept him working without making him secure. The checks were small, the roles smaller, and his looks often arrived in the room before his talent did. He had left college to find a voice. Hollywood kept asking him to stand there and be handsome. Recognition finally arrived in 1991, wearing a cowboy hat. Pitt fought through repeated chances and disappointments for J.D., the drifter in Thelma and Louise, a script he felt was close to the world he knew. The part went elsewhere, reopened, vanished again, and returned only after another actor left. The role occupied only a few scenes, yet the camera understood him instantly. Sun-bleached hair, dangerous ease, a smile audiences remembered after the film moved on. Ridley Scott later called the hairdryer sequence the beginning of Brad Pitt. Posters followed. Magazine covers followed. A career that had barely survived suddenly accelerated beyond his control. But inside, the triumph was the wound he had feared from the beginning. The world had noticed him, and much of it seemed interested only in the surface. Pitt later judged even that celebrated scene with painful severity. "I flatlined that day and failed the scene by a few degrees. It was Gina's performance that made mine." That confession reveals the artist beneath the image. Still measuring, still dissatisfied, still afraid beauty might be mistaken for ability. His first great victory did not end the struggle. It made the struggle visible. When he was unknown, he feared Hollywood would never see him. Once it did, he had to spend years forcing it to look deeper and recognize the artist. Glory arrived early, yet Brad Pitt spent decades fighting the image that reached audiences before his talent. A river runs through it, revealed tenderness beneath the famous face. Legends of the Fall turned him into a wounded romantic icon. Seven exposed fury. Fight Club made him a cultural force. And Troy helped define a generation's vision of masculine power, with paydays reported at $20 million to $30 million per film. The world saw beauty, command, and invincibility. Pitt remembered a less polished interior. Looking back on years of drinking and emotional avoidance, he admitted, "I'm running from feelings." The line cuts through the magazine covers, and the title of Sexiest Man Alive. The face remained composed. The man behind it was still trying to endure himself. Restlessness carried him behind the camera. In 2001, Pitt co-founded Plan B Entertainment with Jennifer Aniston, helping create a home for films many studios might have considered too difficult. The company brought 12 Years a Slave and Moonlight to the screen, both later winning Best Picture. Producing gave him another form of courage. He could use his influence to protect stories about dignity, injustice, survival, and lives Hollywood had pushed to the edge of the frame. Awards multiplied. Marriages fractured. The habits he used to bury difficult emotions followed him home. His later conclusion came without ornament. You either deny them all of your life, or you answer them and evolve. Vindication arrived on February 9, 2020. At 56, Pitt stepped beneath the Oscar lights and accepted his first Academy Award for acting for the 2019 film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Applause rose around him. The statue rested in his hand. For a few minutes, The journey appeared complete. The beautiful face had become an actor of range, a producer of consequence, and a man whose choices had changed cinema. Then the ceremony moved on. The lights softened. The noise receded. He could not hide. No trophy could revise broken relationships, return years blurred by alcohol, or buy the peace that estates, rare art, and a fortune measured in hundreds of millions had failed to deliver. Success had given Pitt freedom, influence, and enduring work. It had also brought him to the one place applause could no longer protect him from: himself. His deepest victory may never fit inside a golden statue. It may be the harder act of standing still when the noise is gone, facing the pain he once outran, and choosing at last to evolve. Heartbreak found Brad Pitt before superstardom could protect him. Sunita remembered a young man who was sweet, playful, and untouched by fame, yet their romance faded as life accelerated. Jill Sholin left the deeper wound. After meeting on cutting class and becoming engaged, Pitt flew to Hungary when she asked to see him, believing the distance could still be crossed. He boarded with hope. He returned knowing her heart had already moved toward the film's director. The same ocean lay beneath both flights, but the man coming home was no longer the one who had left. Tenderness returned with E.G. Daly, who later called him deep-souled and driven beneath the easy charm. Their connection softened the aftermath, though it did not last. Robin Givens brought a brief, disputed tabloid chapter in which private uncertainty became a public story shaped by other people's claims. Then Christina Applegate left Pitt during their date at the 1989 MTV Video Music Awards for another man, later admitting he had deserved better. Juliette Lewis became the longest and most meaningful relationship of those early years, beginning under circumstances that remained sensitive because of their ages. They later lived together and worked on Too Young to Die and California, before separating after about 3 years. Pitt did not erase the bond simply because it ended. "I still love the woman," he said, calling it one of the greatest relationships I've ever been in, while admitting that love does not conquer everything. A relationship can fail without becoming false. Desire can surround a man without giving him permanence. Fame taught Brad how it felt to be wanted by millions. These losses taught him how one person's choice could still break through all that noise. Devotion became a promise when Brad Pitt met Gwyneth Paltrow on the set of 7N in 1994. Their chemistry moved quickly beyond the film, and at the 1996 Golden Globes, he called her "my angel, the love of my life." Later that year, on a balcony in Argentina, he asked her to marry him. She said yes. In that instant, a private promise became a public destiny, and the balcony seemed to hold the beginning of a life neither of them believed would end so soon. The promise felt permanent. For a brief season, Hollywood saw two young stars standing inside the future everyone expected them to share: beauty, success, and a wedding already glowing on the horizon. Brad appeared to have found permanence at last, someone beside whom the noise of fame might finally fall away. Ruin arrived before the vows. In June 1997, the engagement ended, and the life imagined on that balcony vanished before it could become real. Paltrow later looked back with painful honesty. "I think I was a kid and I wasn't ready. He was too good for me." The wedding never came. No public war explained the loss. No single scandal gave it a clean shape. Two people had loved each other deeply, yet forever had reached them before both were ready to live inside it. The cameras still found Brad composed, successful, and desired, while the promise behind that image had already disappeared. Years later, they found friendship, proof that an ending does not erase what was true. Their love had been real. Time simply asked for a maturity they did not yet share, leaving behind the ache of a future once spoken aloud and never lived. Wonder seemed possible when Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston were brought together by their managers in 1998. He was Hollywood's most coveted leading man. She was the warm, funny center of America's biggest television comedy. Their first dates were private and full of laughter, allowing two famous people to feel ordinary. By 1999, they had stepped onto red carpets together, and revealed their engagement during a Sting concert in New York. On July 29, 2000, they married on a bluff in Malibu, before 200 guests, surrounded by 50,000 flowers, music, and fireworks over the Pacific. Jennifer even promised in her vows to make Brad his favorite banana milkshake. The scale was vast, yet the small details made the marriage feel believable. They teased each other in interviews, laughed easily in public, and seemed to have found shelter inside the same demanding life. Pressure grew where the cameras could not see. Both had spoken about wanting a family, and Jennifer later revealed how painful that journey had been. For years, photographers studied her body, magazines announced pregnancies that did not exist, and strangers treated motherhood as a judgment on her ambition and worth. She eventually disclosed she had undergone IVF, tried Chinese teas, and pursued nearly every possibility available to her. "I was trying to get pregnant. It was a challenging road for me," she said, calling the claim that she had chosen her career over giving Brad a child absolute lies. That truth changes the emotional center of the marriage. Behind the headlines was a woman struggling privately, while the public accused her of refusing the future she had been trying to reach. Brad, meanwhile, was moving through one of the busiest periods of his career, with long productions, global travel, and a life increasingly tied to work. Their marriage cannot honestly be reduced to one unmet dream. Yet fame magnified every pause and turned every unanswered question into evidence. When Jennifer called Brad a great love and an anchor who knew all of her, the words sounded less like a fairy tale and more like two people protecting something real under impossible pressure. The fracture became public in January 2005. After 7 years together and nearly 5 years of marriage, they announced their separation, asking for restraint, while the tabloids demanded a villain. Jennifer became the abandoned wife. Brad became the man blamed for breaking America's favorite marriage. Grief turned into teams and accusations. In her first major interview after the split, Jennifer said, "I'm a human being, having a human experience in front of the world." That sentence held the deepest cruelty. The marriage ended once, but the headlines made her relive it every morning. Years later, his admissions about drinking, restlessness, and emotional avoidance added weight without reducing the marriage to one cause or one guilty person. Jennifer refused to let pain erase the years before it. She later described her marriages as successful because their endings did not cancel the love, happiness, or growth they had contained. When the two appeared together again in 2020, fans searched every smile for the return of an old dream. The deeper truth was harder. They had learned to stand near the past without trying to live inside it again. The fireworks over Malibu lasted 13 minutes. The marriage lasted 5 years. What endured was the dignity of two people who reclaimed their story and allowed a lost marriage to remain meaningful without pretending it had been meant to last forever. A family began under accusation. Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie met in 2004 on the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, while Pitt was still married to Jennifer Aniston, and the chemistry created for the film quickly became impossible for the public to separate from real life. Jennifer was cast as the abandoned wife, Angelina as the intruder, and Brad as the man who broke Hollywood's safest love story. Brangelina became a headline before the people inside it found any privacy. Yet beneath the spectacle, a household was taking shape. Jolie had already adopted Maddox, Zahara followed, and Pitt later became their adoptive father. Shiloh was born in Namibia. Pax joined the family from Vietnam, and twins Knox and Vivian were born in France. 6 children transformed a scandal into a family photographed in airports, schools, film festivals, and humanitarian missions. Pitt spoke of fatherhood as the most important role of his life, while Jolie praised his bond with the children. From outside, they appeared fearless and complete. Inside, they were raising 6 young lives across continents, while work, travel, security, and constant attention followed them home. Their life was crowded with school bags, security checks, long flights, film schedules, and the ordinary noise of siblings growing up under extraordinary attention. The drawings on Angelina's wedding veil became the clearest image of what they hoped to protect. Pitt later admitted, "I was boozing too much. It's just become a problem." While Jolie faced the BRCA1 mutation, a preventive double mastectomy, and later surgery to remove her ovaries and fallopian tubes. Her mother had died after years of cancer, so every medical decision carried the fear of leaving 6 children without her. They became engaged in 2012 and married at Chateau Miraval in August 2014. Their children helped prepare the ceremony, carried rings, wrote vows, and filled the veil with drawings that turned it into a family album. The image was tender because all 6 children stood at its center. It became haunting because the marriage lasted only 2 more years. No single surgery, schedule, argument, or personal failing can honestly explain the collapse. Pitt moved between major films and home. Jolie balanced motherhood, directing, and humanitarian work. The pressures multiplied, and the habits they carried into marriage did not disappear beneath the vows. Everything changed in September 2016 during a private flight from Europe to the United States. Jolie later made serious allegations about Pitt's behavior. Pitt disputed wrongdoing, and the investigations did not lead to criminal charges. Days later, she filed for divorce. The family, once seen everywhere together, entered years of separate homes, legal filings, custody disputes, and public judgment. Jolie said, "We are and forever will be a family." Pitt entered therapy, stopped drinking, and acknowledged that he needed to listen to his children more carefully. The deepest wound was no longer the end of a romance. It was fatherhood, divided by distance, damaged trust, and years that could not be replayed. Public signs later suggested strain between Pitt and some of the children, including Shiloh's legal decision to remove Pitt from her surname, though their private relationships remain largely unknown. The divorce was finalized in December 2024, while the dispute over Chateau Miraval continued. By July 2026, the twins had turned 18, and the custody chapter had formally closed. Legal closure ended the marriage on paper, but it could not return birthdays, dinners, or ordinary evenings already divided between separate homes. The veil still exists somewhere, covered in the drawings of 6 children who once stood inside one family photograph. The family in those drawings no longer lives beneath one roof. That is the lasting tragedy. The world watched them build a home, watched it divide, and left the children to carry memories no court could ever arrange into one shared story again. Chateau Miraval became the monument Brad Pitt could not leave behind. The estate in France had once held his 2014 wedding to Angelina Jolie. After their separation, it became the center of a long dispute over ownership, agreements, and Jolie's sale of her stake. Their divorce was finalized in December 2024, yet the Miraval case continued, turning a place associated with vows into a file of motions, testimony, and competing claims. For Pitt, the vineyard was no longer only land or wine. It was a surviving piece of a family dream that the law could divide but never restore. Public memory carried another sentence against him. In 2011, Pitt described himself as having become dull and uninteresting during his marriage to Jennifer Aniston, and the remark was widely heard as an insult to her. He quickly accepted responsibility, explaining that he had been speaking about his own unhappiness. "Jen is an incredibly giving, loving, and hilarious woman who remains my friend." The clarification did not erase the headline. Years of acclaimed work and awards could not fully separate him from the image of the man who had left America's sweetheart. Fame had made his face familiar. It also allowed one careless phrase to outlive the apology that followed it. Nothing cut as close as the changing shape of fatherhood. Reports have described distance between Pitt and Maddox and Pax. Zahara had publicly introduced herself as Jolie. Shiloh legally removed Pitt from her surname in 2024, and by July 2026, Maddox and Zahara had also taken public legal steps toward dropping the name. Their private relationships remain unknown, but the visible signs are painful enough. Pitt once imagined a large, noisy household. Later, he acknowledged how work had taken him away, and said of children, "They need to be listened to. I want to be better at that." The deepest loss is not a headline, a vineyard, or a damaged public image. It is the possibility that a father may understand too late that love must be heard while there is still time to answer it. Grief became irreversible on August 5, 2025, when Jane Etta Pitt died at 84. She had known Brad before Hollywood, before the marriages, the children, the acclaim, and the years when every private fracture became public conversation. Jane and her husband William raised Brad, Doug, and Julie in Springfield, Missouri, where she worked as a school counselor and built a gentler legacy inside her family. She was not merely the star's mother. She was the woman who had known Bradley before the world shortened him to Brad Pitt. Her humor, faith, paintings, and devotion to 14 grandchildren belonged to a life larger than the red carpets on which she sometimes appeared beside her son. Her death needed no invented funeral scene to become devastating. Marriages can end and still leave room for forgiveness. Family trust can sometimes be rebuilt. Death closes the conversation before either person is ready to finish it. Only weeks earlier, Brad had turned toward a television camera during an F1 appearance and remembered that his mother watched the Today Show every morning. He smiled, waved, blew a kiss, and said, "To Jane Pitt, love you, Mom." At the time, it was a small, affectionate interruption in a promotional interview. After August 5th, the moment changed. The recording became his last widely seen public message to her. A son sending love through a camera without knowing how soon it would become a farewell. One ordinary sentence now carried the weight of everything that could no longer be said. That image holds more truth than any fabricated whisper at an awards ceremony. Jane had watched him leave Missouri, struggle toward a career, endure fame's distortions, and become one of the most recognized actors of his generation. Her pride required no invented dialogue. It lived in the years she had already witnessed. Sidney Pitt later wrote that the family was not ready for Jane to leave and remembered a grandmother with the biggest heart, a woman who sang, danced, painted, invented games, and made each grandchild feel individually seen. Those memories widen Brad's grief beyond celebrity. Jane's death was not another item in a catalog of failed marriages, strained relationships, and public judgment. It was the loss of a family center, the person whose memory reached farther back than every headline. Other bonds might still allow conversation, apology, or repair. With his mother, there would be no later call, no ordinary mourning, no chance to finish what remained unsaid. Her life could be honored and carried forward, but never resumed. Wealth can preserve photographs. Awards can preserve a career. Neither can return the person who remembered you before the applause began. In losing Jane, Brad Pitt did not become a fallen golden boy. He became what grief reveals beneath every famous face, a son forced to continue after the first woman who knew his name could no longer answer it. At 62, Brad Pitt lives among the visible rewards of extraordinary success. He reportedly shares a private Los Angeles home with Inés de Ramón, his partner since 2022, and owns the historic D.L. James House, a $40 million retreat carved into the Carmel Cliffs above the Pacific. Other homes remain tied to earlier chapters of his life, rooms once shaped by marriage, children, work, and the belief that certain futures would endure. His fortune is still estimated in the hundreds of millions, surrounded by art, architecture, vehicles, and privileges few could imagine. Yet wealth can secure walls, views, and distance from cameras. It cannot manufacture belonging. That is the sharper truth of Pitt's present life. An empire can provide almost every form of protection, except certainty about who will remain beside you. Sobriety forced Brad Pitt to confront the feelings he had spent years avoiding. In 2017, he acknowledged that drinking had become a problem, entered therapy, and described the difficult clarity of feeling everything again. He spent 18 months in Alcoholics Anonymous, where men spoke openly about failure without judgment. He later called that honesty freeing. By 2022, he had been sober for nearly 6 years. Pitt has also spoken about struggling to recognize faces and believing he may have prosopagnosia, although he has never said he received a formal diagnosis. The condition can complicate social encounters, causing others to perceive coldness, where he experiences confusion and embarrassment. Work remains one of the ways he stays connected to life. Pitt reunited with George Clooney in the 2024 film Wolves, then led F1 in 2025, which earned about $634 million worldwide and became the biggest theatrical success of his career. Through Plan B, he helped bring films such as 12 Years a Slave and Moonlight to the screen. Stories about dignity, injustice, survival, and people fighting to be seen. "If I'm not making, I'm dying in some way," Pitt once explained. Creation cannot erase pain, but it can turn experience into something that reaches beyond the person carrying it. After the last frame, no performance can restore what time has taken or arrange the private pieces of a life back into their original shape. At 62, Brad Pitt is not a ruined man, nor the flawless golden boy the world once invented. He is someone still learning that recovery is not a triumphant ending, but a repeated choice. To stay sober, face responsibility, keep creating, and remain open to repair without demanding it. You either deny them all your life, or you answer them and evolve, he said of difficult emotions. That may be the most honest measure of his later years. For Brad Pitt, peace now seems less like a prize than a practice. It has to be built in private, often without applause. The tragedy is not that Brad Pitt failed. It is that extraordinary success could not protect him from ordinary human loss. The hope is that loss has not stopped him from trying to become more truthful than the image that made him famous. Perhaps that is what endures after the estates change hands and the trophies gather dust. Not perfection, but persistence. Which chapter changed how you see him most? Love, fatherhood, sobriety, or grief? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories about the human lives behind legendary names.